What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to talk about 5 things that every adult intermediate saxophone player should be working on. Teaching an adult student is way different than teaching a middle school or high school student. The reason for that is their goals are usually very different. When you're talking about school kids who are in middle school and high school, their goal is generally to get into the band or get into the jazz band or get into All-State or GT jazz band. They have some kind of audition that they're preparing for. And of course, they want to become better saxophones, but they always have this goal or performance that they're working towards. When we're talking about adult students, normally their goal is just to be able to play the saxophone. They want to be able to play in church or go to a jam session or play for their friends or just sit in their room and be able to play songs that sound good. So when you have these two different kinds of students, you have to approach them in a different way. So today, I'm going to give some very specific advice to adult intermediate saxophone players. Now, this advice will work for any instrument, but because I'm playing a saxophone and I teach saxophone, I'm going to gear it towards that, but the advice is pretty much the same whether you're playing a trumpet or a flute or anything else. As a disclaimer, the fastest and easiest way to get better at the saxophone, besides practicing, is to take lessons. Whether they're in-person lessons or Skype lessons, lessons will help you move way faster towards your goals. Mainly because if you're working with a good teacher, they're going to give you a direct path from point A to B. So if your goal is, I want to be able to learn this song to play it at church, they're going to help you with that song, but along the way, they're going to give you all kinds of tips on how to play the saxophone that's going to help you be a better musician. When you're trying to do it all on your own through YouTube videos, you can get a whole bunch of information out there, but it's not organized in a way that is going to help you get from point A to point B. So the best way to become a better saxophone player is definitely to take lessons. The very first thing that you should be working on is learning songs. If you're an adult intermediate saxophone player, the whole reason you picked up the saxophone is that you wanted to be able to play the saxophone. You want to be able to play songs. So whether that be like at church or one day going to a jam session or joining a band or play out on the street corner in New Orleans or whatever your goal is as a saxophone player, if you're an adult, that most likely has to do with playing melodies. So the first thing you should be doing is working on songs. Now, the type of songs depend on what your level of playing is and what your goal is. So if you want to play jazz songs or go play the jam session, then you want to start learning songs like Summertime and Autumn Leaves and There Will Never Be Another You, songs like that. If you want to play like with a funky jazz group, then you need to look at songs like Watermelon Man and The Chicken and Chameleon and that kind of stuff. If you want to play in church, then you want Amazing Grace and the gospel songs. So it all depends on what your goal is as a saxophone, where you want to play, but you should start working on those songs right away. No matter what your level is, you're at a level where you'll be able to learn a couple songs. And when it comes to learning songs, especially in the beginning, give yourself a week or two. Give yourself 2 weeks on a song, and at the end of a year, you'll have 26 songs. So you'll learn the song really, really well to the point where it's almost memorized and you own that song, and then it'll be in your repertoire of songs that you can play. So let's do a little informal survey. If someone were to ask you right now to play a song for them, what song would you choose? Write it below in the comments. And then everyone who's trying to figure out what songs they should learn, check out the songs in the comments. That's a really good starting place. The next thing that you should be working on are scales. Why are scales so important? Scales are your musical alphabet. So if you don't know your scales, you don't know your alphabet, you're not going to be able to speak the language. So you really need to know your scales because all of the songs that you want to play are based on a scale. So the better you know your scales, the easier it's going to be to play these songs, memorize these songs, remember these songs, change these songs into different keys. Scales are just super important. So if you already know your major scales really well means that you can play them perfectly in under 2 minutes, then move on to your Mixolydian scales. Mixolydian scales meaning a major scale with a flat 7. If you can play your Mixolydian scales really well, do your Dorian minor scales, which has a flat 3rd and a flat 7th. If you can play those really well, then do your natural minor scales, which has a flat 3rd, flat 6th, and flat 7th. You should always be working on some kind of scales. The next thing to work on is tone. So the very first thing we talk about when it comes to working on tone are long tones. And I just did a big video on how to work on long tones. So I would suggest checking that out if you're not sure how to do it. But start off by working on your long tones. If your long tones sound great and you can keep a really consistent, steady tone without any disruptions, then start working on your overtones and get those really clean. That's going to also help build your tone. If you get that really good, then start working on your vibrato with your tone. And then when you get that really good, start thinking about shaping the phrase that you're playing. And no matter what song or what technique or pattern or technique book you're playing out of, think about shaping the phrase. There's always something that you can be working on with your tone. And that has to do with a really steady, full sound, as well as the dynamics and articulation that are involved with it. And the fourth thing that you should be working on is technique. Technique is the ability to play fast and clean and even in time with the correct fingerings. So there are all kinds of books out there, like the Rubank books, the Furling books. I have a series called Chop Shop that I give to my students. And the whole idea behind this is to get your fingers moving faster, to get your fingers moving really clean, and to get to be playing the correct fingerings. There's all kinds of alternate fingerings on the saxophone. So if you learn how to use those correctly, it's going to make your playings way better. And as you're working on your technique studies, you should also be working on articulations and, of course, dynamics. Like I said, there are a bunch of technique books out there, but you can also use scales and chords and patterns. There's anything, all kinds of stuff that you can work on for technique. But a good starting place is the Rubank books or the Furling books, or if you're one of my students, the Chop Shop series. The final thing that an adult intermediate saxophone player should be working on is improvisation and ear training. Improvisation is the ability to take an unwritten solo, so you're making the solo up as you go along. The way to practice that is work on chords, work on chord changes, work on the scales that go along with the chords, see how the chords are related to each other, and just work on your soloing in general. Improvisation is one of those things that the more you do, the better you get at it. So if you include that as a regular part of your practice, you're going to see really big gains in your improvisational skills. Now, when it comes to ear training, that all depends on your level. In the beginning, it can be figuring out nursery rhymes by ear or Christmas carols by ear. Those are really good ones to figure out just because everyone kind of knows them. From there, moving on to transcribing things. Transcriptions are fantastic for getting your ears working better. So when you put the improvisation and the ear training together, that will really help move you forward as a saxophone player. So the 5 things that every intermediate adult saxophone player should be working on are learning songs, working on your scales, working on your tone, working on technique, and working on improvisation and ear training. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. I really hope that it helps you plan out your practice sessions better. And if it does, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Thanks a lot.